backward or forwards.
No, I know what you mean, though. I know, let me,
Like the word noon?
yeah.
Like the word noon.
I called to order the March 29th, 2018 business meeting, and today we have Laurel Buttman sitting in for Don Krupp, and you're the assistant administrator, correct?
Deputy.
Deputy. All right, Laurel, please take the roll.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to introduce Nate Boderman from County Council. Across from me and next to me on the left is Mary Rathke, clerk to the board. Roll call. Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Chair Bernard.
Here, please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is citizen communication, and we have Les Poole. That's the only card we have, so.
Yep.
Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Les Poole from Gladstone. I wanted to share a thought, and that is we're heading into an election, and there's partisan issues out there, partisan candidates, as one would expect. And I come here as best I can as a nonpartisan. We all have our biases. No one is expected to be 100% nonpartisan, but it's a goal, it's a shared vision, and it's a value. So when I come to you, I don't come to you because I'm a representative of a party. I come to you because I'm concerned about the community. And lately, I've been real hard-pressed internally to address some of the things that I've witnessed in the past that obviously many haven't, and some of them are really troubling. So when I come to you, I always come to you as clear and clean as I can, and I don't say things that I cannot substantiate. I think it's important. We're heading into a budget season. Here we are making decisions on hundreds of millions of dollars. Our roads are falling apart. Calling the pothole line isn't going to fix Jennings. Calling the pothole line isn't going to fix Oakfield Road. It's just not. And so I would request that some kind of a article in a newspaper or some kind of a press release or something about where we're at in the roads process, what we're thinking of, what we're doing with the money. I know you folks are having meetings, you're on it. I'm not here to complain about that. I'm simply saying folks don't know where we're at, and I'm dodging potholes. A while back I posted on Facebook, one of these days I'm going to get pulled over by a policeman because he thinks I'm drinking and I'm avoiding potholes. And I got a lot of responses to that. So it's a problem the county, the folks here now have inherited, and it's an old saying, but we got to quit kicking that can down the road. We're on it. We're making some progress. The price of oil and materials and asphalt's probably as good as it's going to get. So at the risk of sounding like I'm repeating myself from 3 years ago, I am repeating myself from 3 years ago. Last thing I'd like to mention is regard to transportation. I attended a work session where they allowed us to ask questions in Clark County on the tolling proposal, which is, I'm going to leave a copy of this. They did a slide presentation. I don't really have time to get into that issue, but there's a lot of commotion and a lot of assumptions there and a lot of grayness, and I know you're caught in the middle of it, and all we really want to do is see the government come up with enough money to add some pavement to 205 and help us get the Sunrise going rather than punish us for not playing the right ball game. So I will leave this. I heard good things about Commissioner Savas and his work, and wanted to share that with you. Well, Clark County, I'm out of time here, but Clark County is in the same boat as Clackamas County. We're where Multnomah County and the growth and all the issues meet the road, and we're stuck in the middle. And we got to stand up for ourselves, whatever that turns out to be. Thanks again.
One thing, Les, you've brought up before is night meetings. We decided to do quarterly night meetings on the 5th Thursday. So we'll be making sure that happens.
Thank you.
All right, so first up, we have a public hearing. And Laurel?
Sure. I'll introduce this. So this is going to be the final step in the integration of agency rules for the West Partnership. So last June 2017, Tri-Cities and the Surface Water Management Agency of Clackamas County rules were integrated, and now we're bringing in the rules for Clackamas County Service District Number 1. So that's the topic for this hearing today, and I'll turn it over to Ron Warenga.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ron Warenga. I'm with Water Environment Services, and I appreciate the opportunity today to present to you this ordinance amending the rules and regulations for Water Environment Services. As you know, the formation of Water Environment Services created a partnership between Clackamas County Service District Number 1, Tri-City Service District, and the Surface Water Management Agency of Clackamas County to allow for regional management of sanitary and storm systems, including our treatment plants. We're now completing the process of transferring the property assets and permits from Clackamas County Service District Number 1 to WES. And so along with that, we need to provide the necessary tools to manage those assets, including board-adopted rules and regulations. 2 public hearings were held last year, and an ordinance was adopted by the board for WES rules that encompass just the Tri-City Service District and the Surface Water Management Agency. Today, we're proposing the addition of Clackamas County Service District Number 1 rules, amending the WES rules approved by the board in 2017. Currently, WES and CCSD1 each have their own administrative rules and regulations that govern sanitary and stormwater system design, construction, and ongoing management, including pollution controls. And so Exhibit A in the ordinance before you is a compilation of the existing WES rules, which again currently only include Tri-City and the Surface Water Management Agency. The amended rules before you today add a new rate zone specific chapter for CCSD1's current rules and regulations, applying only to the CCSD1 area of WES. This incorporation of CCSD1's rules into WES's rules makes no substantive policy changes. They're merely being folded in as they are today. We consider this an interim step, and I'll note that we are currently in the early stages of a comprehensive rules and regulations update, which will create a modern set of rules for all of WES. This will greatly improve our ability to administer our rules, which will benefit our applicants as well as the overall community. So again, I thank you for your time and your consideration of this ordinance, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
My only question is, this has nothing to do with debt.
Correct. This has nothing to do with the actual transfer of the assets to WES. It's merely the administrative rules to govern them, and they will be effective. We're asking that they be effective in July 2018.
All right, thank you. I knew that. I just thought public should know.
Thank you.
All right, so any commissioners have any clarifying questions?
I do not.
Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing to ask if anyone would like to testify on this matter. With that, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move we read the ordinance by title only.
Second.
Been moved and second that we read the ordinance by title only. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Now I'll ask the clerk to assign a number and read the ordinance by title only.
Okay, this is going to be ordinance number 03-2018, an ordinance amending the rules and regulations, water environment services for sanitary sewer and surface water management services.
Okay, any further discussion? So we're not actually voting again on this. We've just assigned a number. So, and no proposed changes. So with that, I'll announce that the second reading will be Thursday, April 12th, 2018, at a regular scheduled business meeting at 10 a.m. That's that. So we'll close the public hearing, or do we leave it open for?
No, you'd close the public hearing and then we'd reopen. We'd have a second hearing. Yep.
Okay, great. I'll close the public hearing and move on to the consent agenda. Yes. I just did. Okay. Yeah.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, today's consent agenda. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, approval of an agency service agreement with Northwest Housing Alternative for system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing. Approval of an agency service agreement with Clackamas Women's Services for system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing. Approval to apply for the fiscal year 2017 Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project Housing and Urban Development Grant. Approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with Oregon Department of Education Youth Development Division for the PreventNet school sites in Milwaukee. Approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with Oregon Department of Education Youth Development Division for the PreventNet school sites in Molalla and Canby. Approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with Oregon Department of Education Youth Development Division for the PreventNet school sites in rural Clackamas County. And approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with Oregon Department of Education Youth Development Division for the PreventNet school sites in urban Clackamas County. Under the Department of Transportation and Development, we have acceptance of the 2017 Clackamas County Traffic Safety Commission Annual Report. Under Community Corrections, approval of local grant agreement number JR 17003 with Clackamas Women's Services for community-based victim services programs. Under Business and Community Services, a resolution authorizing an amendment to the City of Wilsonville's year 2000 Urban Renewal Plan, a resolution authorizing Business and Community Services County Parks Division to apply for a local government grant from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department for restroom replacement at Metzler Park, and approval of a memorandum of understanding between Business and Community Services County Parks Division for the Juvenile Department for overflow parking management. Under Public and Government Affairs, approval of a personal services contract assignment with Summit Strategies to perform project management services on behalf of the Willamette Falls Locks State Commission. And under Technology Services, approval to add 10 additional fiber routes to intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas Broadband Exchange and Lake Oswego School District. And under North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, approval of the Strategic Partnership Facility Use and Transition Agreement between North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and North Clackamas School District, and approval of a purchase and sale agreement with Oak Lodge Water Service District for the Boardman Wetlands Natural Area property. And that concludes today's consent agenda.
Do any members of the commission want to remove or pull an item from the consent agenda?
Chair, I'd like to pull for discussion item D1, the resolution authorizing amendment to the City of Wilsonville's 2000 Urban Renewal Plan.
Okay. So with that, I guess we could just have the discussion right now.
Want to do that, or want to approve the consent agenda, or however?
We can approve the consent agenda as amended.
Okay.
With that item out, and then you
So,
guys.
Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second that, and I have two comments, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First, I wanted to note the tech services item.
Yeah.
We are providing high-speed internet service to a number of public agencies in the area, And I just want folks to know how that affects them as taxpayers. As an example, one of our local schools in Colton was going to be charged $10,000 a month for high-speed internet service to that school district. We are providing that service to that school district and many others in Clackamas County at $255 a month. The savings to the taxpayers overall are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and growing. We're also doing this for fire departments and other organizations. So kudos to the technology services on that issue. And the second one is the last one on the agenda. The underserved area of Jennings Lodge, Oak Lodge, parks-wise, has been an issue, I'm sure, that's been near and dear to Paul's heart for a very long time, and it's good to see the NCPRD purchasing that land and having one more, at least moderate, recreational opportunity for that community. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, I wanted to speak to that as well, and just a little clarification. I think it's, yeah, agenda item under Roman numeral 4.1, the approval of the strategic partnership is, I believe the chair will be signing the documents after this meeting.
Already did.
Basically will convey that some properties and provide the Oak Grove area, not specifically the Jennings Lodge area, the Oak Grove area with a potential for a park or potential library or other assets in that regard. But the Jennings Lodge area, just south of that, you know, has also their desires. Both severely underserved areas, probably Jennings Lodge more so than the Oak Grove area, but this will be a great addition. So I think it's something to celebrate in this aspect of that. This definitely opens the door for new opportunity and provides services where they're severely needed. Yep.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. So I was trying to get the item number on this.
D1.
Or
Okay.
11.
Number,
Oh.
well, it's D1R deal. It's 11 written in, yeah.
So the item that was pulled for discussion was an authorization to amendment to the City of Wilsonville's Year 2000 Urban Renewal Plan. It's item D1, and we're going to discuss that.
Yeah,
Paul.
So just, yeah, thank you, Chair. So just briefly, I'm not sure it's going to change anything here today, but I just want to, urban renewal is extremely complicated. It's been, over the years, been very controversial. I found myself supporting urban renewal in where the math actually worked out and benefit. Sometimes I've been more critical of it. So it's not a black or white issue. It's been something that we've always wrestled with. That said, I've just done my decision-making based on the merits and the financials of that. And I think Wilsonville has a history of doing successful urban renewal projects. I want to make that perfectly clear. And the mayor is present today. I had a conversation with him about this particular one. The unusual aspect of this, after really putting a lot of thought and detail in it, I've mentioned this at our previous work session, is that the transportation burdens that might ensue after 1,007, if indeed that many homes are built, that would occur outside the city, that would be a responsibility of the county. We don't have the means, and Dan Johnson, we don't have the means to fund those and resolve those. And Dan Johnson, our new director for Department of Transportation Development, put together a nice presentation on Tuesday and also an email that I read last evening, and kind of outlines some of the opportunities. But I guess what I was really looking for is more of a commitment, at least that one intersection that we mentioned where it's 65th and Beckman and Stafford Road, I guess, where they come together, which is outside, I think, is that the intersection?
Sounds right, yes.
That one real dangerous one where it's kind of a V there where 65th tags onto, that, which is in the unincorporated area outside there, would be tremendously impacted. And I do understand, on one hand, that if those homes are built and the assessed value goes up, that the county will indeed receive some revenue from that tax revenue. But that tax revenue is not, by state law, is restricted, can't be used for transportation repairs. So we won't be able to do that. So we would actually need some kind of a transportation funding, which would perhaps ultimately, if it was, monies were spent by the county, pulled away from other areas which have need here today. So that's my only discomfort with this whole thing. So it's not an outright protest, but it's just simply something unresolved. I thought maybe a solution to get towards resolution where I could approve it might be an agreement between the city and the county that there would be some cost sharing in that. That was my only ask, to get that middle ground, to find some means of a compromise to share in that cost. And I don't, any legitimate way of assuring that the citizens of Clackamas County wouldn't have to bear those costs solely in the future.
So Dan, could you come up to the dais? This is my understanding. We have to approve the project and the transportation plan before this project moves forward, at which time we would be identifying intersection improvements that would be required. And SDCs would pay for those intersection improvements. Is that correct?
Let me take a second group here for a second. I believe that
walked in
I
out.
just ran across the, yeah. If this question relates to the dialogue that we had, I think, on Tuesday, that question was twofold. It was around if a project were to come forward of any varying size, from 100 to 200 to 300 to 400 homes, whatever it might be, and that project had an impact on a county road system, would we be involved in that discussion about mitigation measures? And the answer is yes. Our development review group and our engineering department would take a look at that traffic study and would recommend mitigating improvements to those intersections, or I should say improvements to those intersections to mitigate any impacts from that development. That is a correct statement.
So I heard the word recommend. Did you say that?
Yes.
Is it require or recommend?
We are a recommending body. Historically, the cities will take those recommendations verbatim and include them in their decision, because the city is the entity that issues the decision.
Okay.
And then you talked briefly about SDCs.
Well, yes, any project like this would have transportation SDCs, then yeah,
Included.
would be included. So if you have a project that has an impact on roads that are owned by Clackamas County, those SDCs would have to fund those improvements.
As we discussed Tuesday, we don't have any kind of joint program anymore with any cities. So the SDCs that would be collected, so if the project occurred within the city boundary, they would collect SDCs. Those SDCs would go towards city projects. We are collecting county-wide SDCs for development within unincorporated Clackamas County. And if there is a project that happened to be impacted by this particular area and it was on our capital improvement plan, we could use our SDCs to assist in funding that. But the city's SDC collection would not be associated with that. Generally speaking, we don't, it becomes a dialogue around the exaction from the developer. We exact the improvement from the developer, and they have to go mitigate it. We generally don't use SDCs in that discussion.
Okay. Well, that makes a difference. Paul, you
Yeah, I just want to, for those out there to understand this is a project, a potential project that's happening on the edge of Wilsonville, within the city of Wilsonville, but could have impacts outside the city, in the county, where there are no SDCs collected. So that's the odd part about this. This is why I'm pointing this out, and that's why I'm looking for some kind of and you know, again, I'm just one vote up here, and that's just my concern.
But you said we could exact, I mean, Wilsonville could exact the mitigation cost from the developer to improve those intersections. And we would be recommending those improvements after we see
Traffic study.
traffic report.
And I want to make sure that the board understands, these are not oddities of discussions that we have. We have these discussions, a lot of these discussions occur where you see the growth currently happening out in Happy Valley. We have a lot of similar discussions about kind of those commingling of jurisdictional roadways. We provide comments, they include us in their pre-application conferences, we identify issues, those issues result in our recommendation, that recommendation goes into their decision and they get exacted.
Great. Ken?
What that suggests to me is that the city does have some leverage in dealing with the developer to suggest, if we will, to the developer that they help mitigate that kind of a problem in a intersection in county land, since it will be impacted.
They can demand it.
And they can actually demand it if they so choose.
Correct.
So I guess the city needs to expect that we will probably exercise our voice in that circumstance.
It is customary for us to exercise our voice when there is an issue on our roadways.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so this, just to add a little bit of information about this, I understand it, and I've asked maybe the city, any representative for the city to correct me if I make an error here, but my understanding is that the reason that the city's anxious to move is they need to make build a bridge across a very low part of a road, and they need a bond for that. And some of these SDCs that will be collected will probably help pay that bond, as I understand it, along with the urban renewal revenues to make up the difference. The question is, will there be a commitment or an agreement that assures that if those monies are inadequate for the capital improvements needed outside, other than this bridge, outside the city, if as having that commitment that won't be borne solely by the citizens of Clackamas County and not that of the city.
Do you desire to come up and speak to that matter? Please. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Tim Knapp, Mayor of Wilsonville. Thank you for the opportunity to enter your discussion. The perspective I would like to bring is this. We're talking about building housing that is in demand and not adequate in supply throughout the county. And the project that we're talking about is about a $14 million project we're trying to fund to allow the home construction to go forward. At some point in the future, my non-analytical sort of gut level expectation is that maybe 20 years from now, we will likely be talking about building houses near the intersection that Commissioner Savas is referencing. At that point, it would be entirely appropriate for the city to combine with the county and look at what funding mechanisms are available. It might be possible that that future housing project at that point in time might be in an urban renewal district, and we might be looking for collaboration to enable a district to be created to do the funding on something such as this intersection improvement in a way that would enable that future housing to go forward adjacent to the intersection area at that time. Right now, we don't have the $14 million to do this safety improvement adjacent the housing that we're proposing a couple miles south of there right now. I don't have the means to take an already underfunded area where we're asking you to collaborate on the $14 million and promise some other tens of million dollars that I don't have and won't have because we've promised to terminate that district by 2024 and say, yes, we will dedicate money to this other project. I cannot see from a practical standpoint any likelihood that we would be other than in discussion with the county at that future time by the time residential growth has extended that couple of miles up to that intersection area. And rightly, we would be collaborating with the county at that point on how to fix those transportation improvements, because if we're building houses that far north of where we are now, yes, there will be a whole lot more traffic at that point in time when those houses are built, and it'll be necessary to meet the concurrency standards that are built into Wilsonville's development codes and have adequate capacity. In the approval process for the project we're entertaining now, we have done engineering analysis of the transportation links, and the current links, including up into the county, have capacity currently to handle the proposed residential development that we're talking about in the Frog Pond area. So I understand the concern. I think it is too early to be trying to engineer how we will address that concern. We're 2 decades away, likely, from that, and it needs to be evaluated in conjunction with some as yet undescribed development adjacent that future area on land that is as yet outside the urban growth boundary, but is urban reserve area and eventually will be urbanized. And absolutely, we would end up collaborating. I can't imagine how we would be talking about residential development without having figured out how to address that intersection by the time we get there. I just don't have the capacity today to promise you a direct route to that.
So, and that is assuming we're still driving on roads.
Somebody will still be driving on roads.
All right, Ken.
Just a quick question. What's the anticipated time frame for build-out on this project?
On the,
Well,
On the current project?
the housing or the bridge?
The housing.
the housing for Frog Pond starts with what we call Frog Pond West neighborhood. We are applying to Metro to bring Frog Pond East Side neighborhood into the urban growth boundary. Since the county has agreed to the urban reserve designation for that. We think probably the east and west side together will probably take something in the range of 15 to 20 years. It may go toward the short end of that. We may have a national downturn in the economy before we get there, and that may slow housing construction. That happened in the last downturn. So things look pretty aggressive right now. There's private developers, itching to get started moving dirt and signing agreements in the Frog Pond West neighborhood. And we're trying to juggle all these pieces and enable that to go forward since the economy remains robust.
The point I wanted to make on that is that it isn't as if that there will be the residents of 1,000 houses tomorrow driving on those roads. This is an incremental increase that's going to occur over a significant period of time. So I think your analysis is correct in terms of when the real impact is liable to hit. That said, again, expect that the county folks will be sort of at the table for discussions as the development occurs, looking to do what can be done on that intersection when it's appropriate.
At that point, as we get into any kind of development projects near the intersection that we're referring to, Beckman, Stafford, 65th, we will be looking to annex property from the county, in that area on some future kind of an agreement, so that we then will be taking more responsibility for those roads within that area, and will have responsibility for a larger portion of that area. Interestingly, the Washington County, Clackamas County line, as I understand it, goes down the middle of 65th Avenue. So not only do you have a county and a city, we're going to have 2 counties and a city by the time we get into working in that area.
How many roads would you like us to turn over to you?
I'd just like to refer to Nate before I go to Paul. My understanding is that if the mayor signed an agreement today, does not restrict future counselors from changing that agreement, because my understanding is you can't commit future councils. Is that correct?
Generally correct, but I mean, if we're talking about a contractual obligation here, where we rely on certain commitments, that's somewhat different, right? And so if we're talking about a commitment of money or a commitment to do something and we're relying upon that, this isn't a policy standard that can be changed in the future. We're talking about a contractual obligation now that, that would certainly bind the county and the city based on that agreement.
That's right.
Okay. All right, Paul?
Yeah, so just put it in context here, and this is the information that the city provided. Mayor Knapp handed me, all of us and the city staff provided, and that was this project could be up to 1,750 homes. So this is not a small, this is not just a small thing, and this is not just a normal intersection that we're speaking about. It's a very dangerous intersection today. This is not the fault of Wilsonville, but it just happens to be that this Beckman, the way it's designed, unfortunately, doesn't meet standards today, and it's very dangerous, and there's a safety element to this. And I agree with the mayor. There's no way that he can, or any of us here can, have any specifics, gather any specifics or criteria or time certain in which that need will arise and even what it looks like. But some level of participation of an agreement for the city to participate, I think, could be reasonably crafted to assure that in the future, because I don't think, if it is 10 or 20 years, that the city council of Wilsonville will be the same people around it, nor will this commission be the same. So, or our staffs for both jurisdictions. So having something memorialized in a document that does speak to that would be something of record, and I think that, again, the citizens of this county and the staff would give some kind of guidance that there be some willingness to participate in that. That's all I've asked.
Chair Bernard, Commission, I think it's premature in my mind. It would seem to be equally appropriate in my mind to ask the county to sign a legal document stating they will fix this county intersection before we adopt it, before we annex it, before we move into that, because we didn't create that intersection, we didn't design it. I mean, so that's not an appropriate approach in my mind. We're working on development in the Frog Pond neighborhood. By the time we get up into that Ellickson neighborhood, of course we're going to have to collaborate. There's no one way to do it by one entity. You have 3 different jurisdictions that come together in that area that will be vested stakeholders, and we'll have to negotiate how that's done when it becomes important. I think the critical thing to understand now is that the engineering analysis that has been done shows that the infrastructure is appropriate for the 1,750 homes that will be built over time in the Frog Pond neighborhood. By the time that is nearing completion, and if there is still demand for housing and we're looking at additional residential growth to the north of that toward the intersection we're discussing, that would be an absolutely appropriate time. But I don't know how to forecast the exact pieces of those, and I would suggest the county probably doesn't know how to do that either. It's more complex than just saying, you know, yeah, we're going to collaborate on it. And, you know, an agreement that just says, yeah, we're going to collaborate doesn't really give the county anything either. It's not sufficiently analytical and detailed enough. So I cannot see how, I share the concern that as we grow, we've got to build adequate infrastructure. And as we grow jobs in North Wilsonville, there will be people that want to live in Clackamas County, you know, and work at those jobs. And over time, that will become something important. Part of the Basalt Creek employment area that we're planning calls for an overpass over I-5 that would come kind of behind the Mercedes dealership and come down and join onto Ellickson Road. There's another huge project that we don't have funded, that we don't know how that's going to work, and yet will be critical ultimately. You know, so we're looking at a lot of different pieces about how growth occurs, and it's a continual kind of a dance of which pieces move forward first and how those steps of funding occur. And the need for that is clear. The way that we do it is incrementally, a step at a time. And I don't see how we jump ahead 20 years or to a step that we're not approaching yet and do an adequate job of trying to structure that at this point in time.
You, Paul?
Yeah, well, I'll just, I don't want to belabor this, but when the mayor and myself actually first met, when I first took office in 2011, we met and we were talking about the interests of others and the issue with the Boone Bridge and how a development south of the river would impact that. And my recollection of that dialogue was very similar. The mayor was, tables turned a little bit, but the mayor was then, and the council was taking the position that we shouldn't do anything because there's no commitment to solve the Boone Bridge problem for any further development. So the tables are turned a little bit, but I thought then that our conversation and subsequent conversations from there forward was that the city was looking for some kind of assurances that if any development ever did happen, that there would be. So the tables are, the geography is different and the road infrastructure is different, but it's the same argument except the tables are somewhat reversed in this case. So I don't know what the mayor was looking for then, but it sounds similar to what I'm asking for here today, and that just a simple agreement. But that we don't get there, and I'm outvoted. That's okay. I'm just making the case, and I just feel a responsibility to the citizens that to bear this cost in the future, and being planners and planning and thinking ahead, concurrency, all the things that the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee was originally formed to do, were to be able to think ahead on these things and how we coordinate those. And sometimes codifying that in writing is always something of value.
I actually like to ask a question. Do we have an UGMA with Wilsonville?
We do. I haven't looked at it in quite some time. Dan and I were just talking about it, if it's been updated recently. I mean, we've got UGMAs with all of our cities, and so we're managing, a number of these different agreements. Some have been updated more recently than others. I just can't put my finger on when.
I mean, that's an agreement that you work on, but it's something that we need to maybe put on, not on our agenda this year, but in future agendas is resolving some of those urban growth management plans with various cities. And then the other thing that you commented on is that, first off, you have to, Metro has to approve bringing it into the UGB. And that hasn't occurred yet, so we don't know when that's going to occur. But, all right, I'm satisfied we had enough discussion. Is there a...
Mr. Chairman, under Business and Community Services, item number 1, move to approve resolution authorizing an amendment to the City of Wilsonville's Year 2000 Urban Renewal Plan.
Second. Any further discussion?
No, I want you to add, I'm not here to impede this at all, and I'm just working in good faith, and I, if there was an agreement, I'd be supporting the urban renewal district, so.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Passes 3-1. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is the county administrator updates.
Sure, I have a few news items for you today. First, I want to congratulate Oregon City. The Downtown Oregon City Association was named one of 3 winners of the 2018 Great American Main Street Awards. It's a national competition that awards exceptional downtown models for comprehensive preservation-based commercial district revitalization. It's great to see Oregon City, which is also our county seat, be recognized in this way. Pretty exciting. Also, last week, Water Environment Services participated in the Celebrating Water a Day event at Clackamas Community College, and over 500 students learned all about watersheds there. Wes helped to coordinate environmental education activities where high school students provided hands-on experiences to local 4th and 5th graders. And the previous week, Wes participated in the regional Children's Clean Water Festival at the University of Portland, reaching out to 1,400 fourth graders who learned about water through performances and hands-on lessons. Great examples of public outreach from our West staff. And finally, the annual Master Recycler program for Clackamas County residents started last night. After this class concludes, Master Recyclers will share the ins and outs of recycling at events throughout the county. Last year, Master Recyclers volunteered over 1,000 hours in the county promoting the message of resource conservation. So we're happy to welcome the new class and their upcoming efforts. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up is Commissioner Schrader.
Well, it's nice to be here today, folks. We had a retreat yesterday, our board retreat, where we reviewed our goals for the year based on Performance Clackamas, which is an outcome-based model that we are working very diligently to implement across all of our county domains and agencies. And I want to thank Laurel for being there as our assistant administrator and helping us get through that process. I think we started at 8:30 and ended at 4:30 with a short break for working lunch. So it was quite the time yesterday. I also this week had an opportunity to meet with Metro President Tom Hughes, where we talked about what will be going on in MPAC, the Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee for the year, and what we'll be looking at in the future as I get more and more involved with the urban growth boundary expansion and the conversation dealing with having a housing bond that would help us with affordable housing opportunities throughout the metro region. Also attended on Saturday night, which was kind of a fun thing, the Lake Oswego Chamber of Commerce dinner, where citizens throughout Lake Oswego are awarded for being good citizens and contributing to the community. With that, let me move to, I think we said we were going to do the word of the week, weren't we, Mary? Okay, so let's do that first. Hey, the word of the week is laudable. Adjective. It's worthy of praise. And did you know that laudable was first known to be used in the 15th century? And the sentence is, a librarian's dedication has been laudable throughout the years. Word of the week. And now I'm going to move to arts and culture activities in the county. Okay, I'll start reading. All right. The Art Gym Place Names Exhibition. Place Names is an exhibition by regional artists Manuel Arturo Abreu, Portland, Oregon, and Christopher Paul Jordan, Tacoma, Washington. Through painting, sculpture, built environments, and explorations of language, Place Names explores the abstracted visual and emotional cues that influence how a sense of place is communicated. That's going on now through May 20th, Tuesday through Sundays, noon to 4 p.m. at the Art Gym in Marylhurst University. And Lakewood Theater Company presents El Grande de Coca-Cola. In a nightclub somewhat even further south than south of the border, impresario Senor Pepe Hernandez is forced to hire his family to perform when famous international cabaret stars don't show. A deliriously funny and ridiculously wild extravaganza. That is going on at our Lakewood Theater of the Arts in Lake Oswego, Friday and Saturday, March 29th, 30th, and 31st, 7:30 p.m. at the Lakewood Center. And also I'm going to put a plug in for our own Clackamas Repertory Theater here. On April 14th, they're having a gala supporting their theater arts events. So I would encourage everyone to go to their website and buy a ticket, and also buy tickets to the shows that they are doing this year, which include Sense and Sensibility, Annie, and the play Ripcord. So that's the news for the week in the arts in Clackamas County.
Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week was a pretty busy week at the Mass Timber Conference in Portland. Quite a few courses, classes, and breakout sessions were there, mostly technically oriented and well beyond my area of expertise. So I spent a good portion of my time actually networking with business people and others that were there. Two that particularly stand out is a Carpenters Union representative was there, and they are indicating some interest in investing in this process with their own funds, and they have already begun training their people. So incrementally, slowly but surely, things are moving forward. The other is that we have had contact with a business person who has some interest in doing a mass timber project here, opening up a business, and I had a chance to network with him some more, and he still is retaining his interest, so hopefully that will bear fruit in the future. We had a meeting with Representative Oregon Wild to discuss cross-laminated timber and the harvesting processes that we use currently here in Clackamas County and how we meet and exceed state and federal requirements. That piqued some interest, and they will be coming to the table for some in-depth discussions, hopefully joining the other 5 environmental groups that have signed on in support of our project. Let's see, I met with, or actually we all met, excuse me, with the Tourism Development Council this week, and I think we made some progress on some of the issues that have been bedeviling the 2 boards and built some trust, I think, to move this forward and come up with an operational system that'll be that will work for them in terms of the freedom that they need to do their job, but have the administrative accountability that's important to our Chief Administrative Officer and the board. I had a meeting with Mayor Tammy Stemple this week to discuss water and environmental services issues, and then met with 2 other councilors from Gladstone to discuss a CLT project. They're considering the idea of using that as part of their building project for their police station and City Hall. And that pretty much covers it. Thank you. Oh, the dog. Thank you. You were just waiting to say that, weren't you? And it's right in front of me. You got me. Okay. This is Sterling. As his name suggests, he is a beautiful, unique silver dapple color. He's a sweet and cuddly kind of guy looking for a warm lap and a cuddle buddy. As a 3-year-old, he will need some walks and an area to explore that is all his own. He'd like to be your only special little guy. Give him an extra couple of minutes to get used to a new person, and he will work his way into your heart and lap. Come meet Sterling today. For more information about Sterling and other adoptable dogs, please contact Clackamas County Dog Services at 503-655-8628 or www.clackamas.us/dogs. Thank you.
Great. Paul? Yeah, well, it seems the appropriate topic of the day might be transportation and safety to some degree, coming off the heels of the discussion about Wilsonville. And I just want to, and then Les's comments, Mr. Poole's comments earlier about our roads, and, you know, we always find ourselves making a tough call, decision based on whether we appropriate monies towards maintenance and fixing our, you know, what we have, or doing projects for capacity or growth, or doing projects for safety reasons, and it's always a tough call. And the Oregon Transportation Commission also does that with all of our gas tax dollars. They decide how much of their budget, and the numbers are typically 75 to 85% of their monies are directed towards maintenance. That includes bridges and all those things, and maybe a smaller percentage, obviously, going towards capital improvements. And as we grow, traffic situations and safety situations arise, and I think, especially when it comes to neighbors and communities, that it's been very important. It's something that is really important to me. I lost 3 family members due to car accidents, 2 separate car accidents, and they were really safety issues. They were safety issues from poor design or improvements needed that were, you know, frankly, just not up to par. And so every time a decision comes up and there's a safety matter to it, it's something I have to factor, and I got to balance that out as far as addressing that. There's nothing more surprising is to a sudden loss of life. And I want to also recognize that, you know, this week we learned about a family in West Lynn that had a tragic accident in California and went off a cliff, and had some family members perish. And I don't know what safety issues or what happened there. We don't know yet, but I just want to acknowledge my condolences to the family and friends.
All right. Thank you. So, you know, the economy's pretty good, and one of the indicators of how we're doing in the economy is some of the projects that have been going on. This week, I mean, the last 5 weeks approximately, I've signed $181 million worth of project dollars. And these are not monies we're spending, but other people are spending. Willamette View is a $92.8 million project that they're doing. Mary's Woods last night, $55 million in project development. All those are not bonds that we're responsible for. They are, but they're projects that'll put a lot of people to work. Mary's Woods and Willamette View are in the middle of these projects, and they're huge. We have a growing senior population, and these projects will try to address, you know, future housing for these folks. We also, today, I signed the property transaction with North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and North Clackamas School District. An $18 million deal. Clackamas County will get basically $14 million in cash. Is that right? No.
$14 million in cash and ownership of 3 separate school facilities.
Yes. So and Paul mentioned earlier the opportunity on Concord School to look at parks development, reuse of that building, maybe a future city hall for Oak Grove Jennings Lodge. Who knows? But it also a library opportunity. So that one didn't actually cost us anything. We actually got money. It'll pay off some debt, and it will provide some cash for future projects. I mentioned earlier we did at the retreat talk about night meetings on the 5th Thursday. In case you didn't know, there's 4 a year. Also, last weekend I went to the tree school, which was at Clackamas Community College, which is, there's a lot of people involved in it, but 800 people attended that. So they give classes on all kinds of subjects. There's forest management, small forest management, private management of forest, fruit tree trimming, and many other things. It's just a really great project.
Was that the one that Mike Bondi
Yeah.
put?
Yeah.
Wish I'd have known.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to you, but you were at that other conference.
Well, that was not on the weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
Darn.
yeah. I've gone to it well, they've been doing it for years. I went last year. I was really impressed. So a lot of the providers like the Soil and Water Conservation District was there, and then some individuals, various groups that work with people to resolve issues. They were there. So it was a great meeting, except I had so many things to do, I wasn't able to stay very long. Also, as Ken mentioned, we sat down with the fair. Did you mention this?
No, I left that one for you.
Oh, the fair board and the chair of the fair board and Ken and I and other folks, and we went through the agreement. And I think after a number of years, we finally resolved this issue with the fair board, and look forward to that. Well, with that, you know, I've married Jo Cartesania. Somebody gave her this little knitted bunny. Like to wish you happy Easter, and hopefully it'll be sunny, and the Easter egg hunts will be a lot of fun for a lot of kids. I remember them very well when I was a kid. Well, with that, we will adjourn. Thank you for coming today.